The SR-71, also known as the Blackbird, is an icon amongst American reconnaissance aircraft. Its futuristic design and innovative technology have both served as inspiration for much of what has followed in the modern world over the years. But will the SR-71 successor be able to surpass its performance? Let's dive in and find out. The Lockheed SR-71 strategic reconnaissance aircraft first appeared in the sky back in 1964, and it still draws the public's attention. First and foremost, there is its appearance. Of course, after all, it does not look like your typical military aircraft, but rather some kind of alien ship or piece of top-secret technology from the future. This secrecy regarding the SR-71's exact capabilities, limitations, and technical specifications applies even today, even though the planes themselves were decommissioned by the U.S. Air Force back in 1998, and only a year later the plane was decommissioned by NASA as well. The project development was so classified that one of the measures in place to ensure secrecy was a special clearance protocol for personnel on site prior to the aircraft being rolled out of the hangar. A siren was switched on, or a special voice command was given over the speakers, after which all personnel on the airbase who did not have access to the project were forced to lie face down on the ground, close their eyes, and place their hands on the back of their heads. People were to remain in this position until the plane had either disappeared from sight after takeoff or had been rolled back into its hangar. A similar procedure was also enforced whenever the Blackbird approached the airbase. Furthermore, false information regarding the aircraft characteristics and combat capabilities were released as the aircraft was progressively tested in order to throw off any enemy's responsibility for the development of this unique aircraft fell to Clarence Kelly Johnson, a talented American aircraft designer who led Skunk Works, the research arm of Lockheed, for more than 40 years. According to Johnson himself, they had to invent literally everything from scratch when designing the SR-71. One of the biggest challenges that the engineers faced was addressing the heating problem the aircraft encountered due to it exceeding 2,000 miles per hour in flight. The atmospheric friction heated up the fuselage to such a degree that the typical A-frame would simply melt. Therefore, the main body was made of titanium, which is many times lighter than steel, yet can easily withstand even the highest temperatures. Nevertheless, using titanium wasn't the smoothest experience for the engineers. Their conventional tools destroyed the fragile material on contact, which made titanium toolkits the only viable option. The search for such material turned out to be a real headache for the Skunk Works, since the largest supplier of titanium at the time just so happened to be the USSR. The latter's relations with the United States in those years were, to put it mildly, fragile. Military experts have stated that this forced the U.S. to acquire large stocks of material via fictitious companies. This was not the most legal approach, but nonetheless an effective solution to the problem at hand. The craft's working altitude represented yet another important aspect to consider when simulating the pilot's performance. A person's ability to perceive an altitude of more than 24 kilometers became skewed while continuing to use a standard oxygen mask designed for an altitude of 13 kilometers. Not only that, but a flight speed of Mach 3 only created additional health risks, thus forcing careful and deliberate thought regarding the life support system. The frontmost edges of the craft reached temperatures pushing 750 degrees Fahrenheit, and the average surface temperature was recorded at approximately 500 degrees Fahrenheit. One of the pilots claimed that during his flight, the SR-71's cockpit became so heated that he could heat up food during longer missions by simply pushing it up against the glass. Now, such conditions obviously did not allow pilots to be sent on missions without additional precautions. For example, specifically designed spacesuits were made. These were also used by the crews of actual space shuttles later on. Considering the fact that the Blackbird's operational missions were on the clock, much like the launching of spaceships, the introduction of these suits seemed to be a very natural solution. Looking back at the missions done, the military said that preparing the crew and aircraft for departure required an incredible amount of effort from personnel. It apparently demanded an entire army of people. In most pictures, the SR 71 is shown in black, though it was originally unpainted. The decision to paint the reconnaissance craft black came shortly after scientists were able to prove that black paint both absorbs and radiates heat effectively, thus helping to reduce the overall temperature of the A-frame. In 1976, the SR-71 set multiple records. Ones that to date no aircraft in the world has broken, for example flying at a constant altitude of 85,069 feet, with a maximum speed of 2,193.2 miles per hour, which is equivalent to Mach 3.3 back in those days. One of the SR-71 pilots said that he'd been able to accelerate up to Mach 3.5, although they were never able to confirm this. The U.S. Force retired the Blackbird in 1998, although its last flight was actually with NASA in 1999 at the time, when several aircraft were being used for high speed and high-altitude aeronautical research. Since then, the remaining aircraft have come to be the property of various museums. One such establishment, which acquired a copy for itself, was the Smithsonian Institution's National Air and Space Museum located near Washington Dulles Airport. However, the legacy of this legend is not to simply fade into obscurity. Apparently, the employees of Lockheed Martin were on the same opinion back in 2007. A number of news outlets reported that the pioneers of American aviation, with the Skunk Works division at the helm, were developing a reconnaissance aircraft that was 6 times faster than the speed of sound, or Mach 6, putting it at about 4,000 miles per hour. The company itself made its first announcement regarding the project in 2013. Set apart from its predecessor, the SR-71, which was stealth-oriented, the SR-72 is looking to not only double the former's best performance, but also introduce new rules into the game, namely that speed is a new invisibility. It is this principle specifically that guides the engineers involved in the development of this innovative hypersonic reconnaissance aircraft. The project's leaders believe that improved network sensors will in the future significantly reduce the importance of stealth aircraft survivability, once again making speed their main focus and the primary means of protection against enemy forces. The latest surface-to-air missiles proved that the speed of Mach 3 was insufficient in guaranteeing survival of a combat aircraft. However, the hypersonic SR-72 is already ahead of the curve. The main challenge Lockheed Martin's engineers face in guaranteeing a speed of more than Mach 6 was to also ensure that Blackbird's protege took off and landed at lower speeds. For example, the first manned hypersonic vehicle, the X-15, performed suborbital space flights at a speed of approximately Mach 6.7. However, it required the support of the B-52 Stratofortress bomber from Boeing to facilitate both takeoff and landing. Unfortunately, Lockheed Martin CEO Robert Wise said he was unable to release any further details for the time being. Still, he did clarify that the company is working alongside DARPA to ensure unprecedented speed, as well as the introduction of the latest in applied science into the aircraft. Lockheed Martin, with the help of Aerojet Rocketdyne, achieved a technological breakthrough with the development of a combined cycle engine. This involves 2 turbojets operating at speeds below Mach 3, as well as a hypersonic scramjet engine, which was designed specifically for hypersonic cruising flights. The scramjet provides thrust by sucking in air, while at hypersonic speeds, as a separate engine brings a plane up to these speeds, at which point the scramjet is then switched on. The combined cycle engine allows for a dual-engine solution, since the turbojet and scramjet engines utilize the same air intakes and exhaust nozzles. With an impressive 4,000 miles per hour speed, the hypersonic reconnaissance aircraft could potentially fly out of an air base located in the continental United States and eliminate targets across the Atlantic or Pacific in a mere 90 minutes. Additionally, the aircraft, unlike ballistic missiles, will return to the airfield from which it came after completing its task, and will be prepared to execute follow-up missions. The SR-72 is expected to be of the same size as its predecessor, coming in at about 100 feet in length, and also have an identical range. Still, the cost of the prototype heir to the Blackbird, which was the size of the F-22 stealth fighter, sat an estimated $1 billion. The SR-72 stealth was most likely prevented by the sheer amount of heat generated while moving at top speed, since this makes the aircraft highly visible to reconnaissance and radar detection equipment and the fact that the radio wave absorbing coating on the hull would have literally burned off at a speed of more than Mach 6, and this is not exactly just another problem fixed by titanium. The prospect of creating a serial hypersonic drone will most definitely attract not only the attention of government agencies, but also bring more funds to Lockheed Martin. Nevertheless, this can simultaneously conflict with the stealth paradigm that the U.S. Air Force currently adheres to in regard to the development of its modern fleet. While they are undoubtedly inclined to put the SR-72 into service quickly, the Air Force is still leaning more towards acquiring dozens of F-35 stealth fighters, which Lockheed Martin is also building, as well as a next-generation B-21 Raider bombers. Therefore, some experts are saying that the projected first flight of the SR-72 in 2023 and its entry into service with the U.S. Air Force in 2030 is still too optimistic. What are your thoughts? Will the SR-72 live up to the expectations? Let us know in the comment below. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to see more content just like today's. Thank you, and we'll see you in the next video.